Wake Up Wake County and the Wake County League of Women Voters present the 2011 Wake County School Board District 8 Candidate Forum.
All right, is everybody hearing me okay? All right, more instructions. Please refrain from applauding until the forum is over. Even if you really like a candidate's answer, just keep your hands to yourself. This is a forum, it's not a debate, and it's designed to give the candidates an opportunity to present themselves and to speak to the issues. You, the audience, will have an opportunity to ask questions of the candidates after the first part of the forum is completed. Members of the Wake County Board of Education serve a 4-year term. Each member represents a district in the county. The candidate must live in the district from which he or she runs, and voters must be residents of the district to vote for the candidate in that district. The districts serve staggered terms, so this year districts 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8 are open for election. The election is nonpartisan, meaning the candidates are not running as representatives of a political party. Election day is Tuesday, October 11, and there's early voting as well. And the Board of Elections will have all that information for you if you don't have it from some other source. Now to the candidates, again, thanks for coming. Each of you will have 2 minutes for an opening statement built around the 3 questions that we sent to you. You'll have 1 minute for subsequent questions that I will pose as a moderator, and you will alternate going first with your responses. Then you'll have 1 minute for each question from the audience at the microphone. They will come up to this microphone. You'll form a line over here and be quiet and orderly. And then you will speak from this microphone. And again, you will alternate answering those questions. At the end, you will then have 3 minutes for your concluding statement, and that will end the forum. The timekeepers tonight are Louise Romanoff and Jenny Batterson from the League of Women Voters. And I want the candidates to keep an eye on them. They will show them your 15-second warning sign and then your stop, okay? And I would appreciate it if you would pay attention to that. And when your time is up, please stop. Members of the audience will, when they ask questions from the microphone, both of you candidates will respond to each question. There will be no directed questions. In the interest of keeping the forum to a reasonable time, we may conclude the audience portion in 30 minutes, even if there are still people in line. So I don't want anybody to get bent out of shape if you don't get your question answered, because it is important that this thing not drag on and on. So that's going to be the rule. Okay, so let us begin. And Susan Evans, you will go first. I want you to give us your 2-minute opening statement built around these 3 questions. What do you hope to accomplish if you serve on the Wake County Board of Education? What specific skills and qualities would you contribute to the board? Serving on the Board of Education is an extremely time-consuming commitment to the community, can also be very stressful. Why do you want to take on this challenge?
Asking myself that every day. Okay, can you hear me? This doesn't seem quite as loud. Is it okay? Okay. All right.
If you're comfortable to stand. You have to assume that you know who's talking.
I'll stand. It's going to be a lot up and down for the question. Yeah. True. Okay. Well, hello, I'm Susan Evans. What I hope to accomplish by joining the Board of Education is I want to bring strong professional leadership to our Board of Education. I believe in collaborative, common sense decision-making based on facts and community input. I promise to lead with integrity, restoring the community's respect and trust in their board leaders. I want to plan effectively for the continued expected growth in our system. I want to establish assignment policies that promise as much stability as possible for our families. I will encourage open lines of communication between the public, our educators, and the school board. I want to ensure academic excellence for all our students and great learning environments for all our students. I will advocate for enriched educational opportunities, especially for our academically gifted students. I will protect and expand our successful magnet program, which has been an effective way to enhance the use of our facilities and minimize any higher need schools. My skills, first and foremost, I'm a longtime Wake County resident. Second, I'm a parent of 2 children who have gone all the way through the Wake County Public Schools, so I bring a lot of perspective to Wake County schools. My professional background in accounting and business provides business acumen tools that will be very useful on the Board of Education. I've served in many leadership roles in my church and other organizations. I've served as finance chair, treasurer. I've served on the Board of Trustees, long-range planning, stewardship, and building committees. All of this experience will help me with strategic planning and resource allocation once on the board. And I promise I will maximize the use of our funding and facilities. I'm an invested citizen who's compelled to use my passion for public education to run for this office. I'm fortunate that I have a part-time job and have recently become an empty nester, so I can bring the energy necessary to be an effective leader, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Margiotta, do I need to repeat the questions? No, good.
Welcome to Apex. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. Can't hear me? Better? Okay. Welcome to Apex. Appreciate the large turnout. I think it's great that there's so much interest in this campaign. This election is certainly an important one. I'll introduce myself, Ron Margiotta. I'm presently the school board member from District 8, which represents Apex, Holly Springs, and the southeastern portion of Cary, and all of the unincorporated areas in between that Cary has not yet annexed. I've served on the board and have served as chairman for the past 2 years, and it's been very difficult for us to get our message out to the public as to our accomplishments, but there are many. We have made major accomplishments in the past 2 years, and I think if you'd like to go onto my website, we list a number of them. We've condensed them. Originally started out with 6 typewritten pages, reduced them to 2, and now to 1 page. I think one of the greatest achievements that I'm most proud of is the hiring of our new superintendent of schools, Superintendent Tony Tata, who in the short period that he's been here has just expressed such leadership qualities and has started to direct us in the right direction for improving student achievement, which is something that we're all concerned with. I don't think there's anyone in this room that doesn't want to see our student achievement improve. We are currently working on an assignment plan. Our staff has been busy with this since March. They've had numerous meetings, I think somewhere close to 20 meetings with the public. They have listened to the public. They have made many adjustments, many corrections. School board members have been minimally involved. And that plan will be presented to the school board in the very near future as soon as the team, as we call them, as soon as they've completed their work on a plan. I think we've asked as to, I think we've improved the magnet programs, the acceptance into the magnet programs during this past 2-year period. We've also given parents choice as far as calendars go, and I'm finished. That's the end. Thank you.
Thank you for obeying the sign. They're turning it back on. I think they turned it off because of the sound, so I'm just going to yell louder now. All right, now I will pose some prepared questions for this portion of the forum. And Ms. Evans, you will start with your response, and there will be a 1-minute response to each question. The current school board is currently reviewing new options for a student assignment plan. What is your personal vision for an ideal assignment plan?
Well, I think the #1 criteria for any future assignment plan for Wake County is to provide as much stability as possible for our families. we have really suffered with numerous reassignments, particularly in southwestern Wake, and I've heard the cry of the families that need relief. This has been brought about by our growth, though, and people need to understand that it's been difficult as we've tried in the last decade and a half to fill a lot of new schools. So whatever we come up with, it needs to address stabilities for families. I think it's very important that when a child enters a particular school, he be able to finish at that school. So I will support any plan that allows that. I'm happy to say that the current proposed model being developed by the task force does have that component. However, I'm also knowledgeable that in recent surveys, 94% of our families say they would like to stay in their current assignment. So I think we have a little bit of time to review this and decide what is the best way to go, and we don't have to rush into anything.
I think I'm going to ask to remove my jacket in a few minutes if that air conditioner
go ahead,
doesn't
please.
get better. Yeah, but just to go on, as I explained earlier, we presently have a team working on an assignment plan. They have reached out to the public. They have made many changes, many adjustments, and the plan, from my viewpoint, must incorporate proximity. The test drive that was run pointed out across the county parents want their children to be in the school closest to their home. And I think that's been my goal since I first came on the school board. I'm a strong believer in neighborhood schools, and I would not accept a plan that did not give us that choice. Now, it doesn't mean that a parent cannot choose a school outside of their immediate area. However, their first choice must be theirs, and it's proximity, and we also want to guarantee stability for parents, that once that child enters that school, they know that they'll remain in that school for their full term.
All right, question number 2, and Mr. Margiotta, you will go first on answering this one. What are the specific needs of District 8 that you will fight for if elected to the Board of Education?
I think what we need in District 8 is more of, I always joke and say that there are some parts of the county that have been receiving the whipped cream, and we in District 8 and some outside the Beltline have been suffering with the broccoli. And what I referred to is some of the programs that were lacking out in this part of the county. We emphasize helping the lower performing students, and I think that's important. And we have been working very hard in this past 2 years. And I think if you go on my website, you'll see some of the challenges that we've had and some of the achievements that we've made in that area. But we also have to be concerned with the academically gifted students. The academically gifted programs in Wake County are extremely lacking. So it's an area that needs some improvement, and it needs it immediately. And then we also have to be concerned with all of those in the middle. And we also have to be concerned with our voc tech students. Some students don't want to, don't need to, and shouldn't go to college.
Do you need the question repeated?
No. Well, I believe also that one of the most important things for this district is for us to look at our academic offerings for our students. I do believe we need stronger curriculum for this area. We certainly need to be meeting the needs of our academically gifted students, and I mentioned that earlier. The other thing that I think is top on the list as a concern for District 8 is our continued expected growth. We have got to plan for growth because capacity issues are going to continue to challenge us for the next number of years. We don't even know how many, but we are already over the top with modular classrooms at all of our schools and busting at the seams, and this is still an area that's attracting a lot of families. So I want to bring to the table a proactive plan to work together with county leaders and board members to plan effectively for the future growth.
Thank you. Our timers are hard at work up here. The third question, and Ms. Evans, you will answer first on this one. We're going to alternate this first answering thing. What is your position on the accreditation of Wake County schools by independent boards? Is accreditation important? And please explain.
Yes, I think accreditation of our high schools is particularly important. We have to have some measure across the board for colleges and universities to be able to compare our students. They have to know that our school system meets certain criteria, and that's what the accreditation process does. I have been very concerned that our current school board majority compromised our accreditation for our students. And for people who don't know, that is still under review. We are still in warning status, and it has not been resolved. So yes, I think it's very important that we restore a great reputation to Wake County Public Schools and have an effective school board, because that's one of the things that's being looked at very carefully by the organization that's currently in charge of accrediting our high schools. Thank you.
I think I have to agree with Miss Evans. Accreditation is important, and I think that our high schools have always been accredited. Okay. How about this? How about this? Any better? Maybe I'll work without the microphone. Still can't hear anything?
We need the air conditioner.
We need both. How? Will that help? I don't know. Will this help better? Any better? Any better? Any better? Okay. Is this any better? Hey, okay. Accreditation, extremely important for our schools. And the Wake County high schools have never reached a point where we've lost accreditation. The Middle States group has come in and worked with us in addition to the Southern Conference. And we just went through, I think it was 2 years ago, we went through 5 high schools that went through the accreditation process, and they were granted full accreditation. So we've never had a concern. Our programs are good, our teaching staff is excellent, and I don't anticipate us ever have any problems with accreditation.
Yeah, you'll be first. All right, question number 4. Earlier school boards and Superintendent Tata have advocated the development of specialized academies. For example, schools with focus on science, technology skills, single-gender leadership, and science academies. Would your support for these new schools affect your support of the current selection and availability of magnet schools?
Shouldn't, was it, can I just get the last part of that question? Would your support for these new schools affect? No, because I think these schools, because I believe these schools will also be by application. So they will do nothing but complement our magnet schools. Okay. The new programs that have been presented by our superintendent, I mean, we'll take specifically the leadership academies. They're academies, they're not brand new. They've been tested in different parts of the country, as local as Guilford County, and they've been extremely successful. They're extremely helpful for students that are not achieving as well as they should be, and I have great expectations for these schools, and they certainly will not impact our magnet schools in any manner, because they will also be by application the same, and they will complement our magnet schools. I think it will enhance our magnet programs here in Wake County.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to stay here. All right. As I said before, I certainly believe in our magnet program and all choice options that entice our families to choose to help balance our schools. So I will support any theme schools or otherwise that continue to do that. However, it must be noted that the theme schools are different from the magnet schools. The magnet schools fit a certain profile that guarantees us the availability to apply for magnet grants, and we can get funding if we meet certain criteria. These other theme schools do not necessarily meet that criteria. Also, I would just like to comment on the newly approved same-sex academies. I don't know if it's a good idea or not. Haven't had time to really research it. I was surprised that it was presented very quickly a few weeks ago to the board, and then it was rushed through as a vote last week. We have not tested this at all. We tested our choice model, gave parents a pilot area, but we've not even asked one parent if they're interested in sending their child to this school, but we've already committed the funds to do it, so I don't understand that.
Next question. The Wake County Public Schools are likely to need additional funds to build and support schools in the near future. Would you support a bond initiative with the potential for increased taxes to raise these funds? If not, why not? If so, how would you convince the citizens of Wake County to support it? And Susan, you will go first.
Well, I certainly think we have capacity issues already. We're going to have bigger issues just around the corner. The projections are that next year we're already out of high school space. A couple of years down the road, we're again reaching a critical limit with our elementary students, and then a year or two after that, our middle school students. So, you know, it's important that we do two things. We have to continue as a school system to effectively use all of our facilities the best that we can. That is one reason why it's important to have balanced populations in our schools. But with that being said, even if we fill every seat in every school, we, without a doubt, are going to have more capacity. Well, whether I'm in favor of raising taxes, I can't say, but I certainly am in favor of the school board putting together a justifiable plan and meeting with the county finance leaders and getting to work on what will be a future bond referendum.
I can use the exercise. I think our staff has been and is working on preparation for the next bond based on projections, based on enrollments. I think we've had some great achievement in the past bond, in the 2006 bond referendum. We were able to see a savings of $100 million. That $100 million will be spent on, never anticipated, but again, we do have a need for high school seats desperately in this part of the county. We will be building a new high school in Apex with that $100 million savings. We will also be having a 9th grade center implemented at Panther Creek High School and another one at Garner High School with that savings. We will also be introducing some modular classrooms at Holly Springs High School to relieve some of the pressure, some of the overcapacity at Holly Springs, at Athens Drive, and at Middle Creek High Schools. But again, the new high school in Apex will give us a great deal of relief of overcrowding at Apex High School, Holly Springs High School, and Panther Creek High School.
Don't sit down because you first.
I thought that was the last one. Okay.
Oh, even it, no, it depends on time. All right, the next question, and Mr. Margiotta will go first on this one. What should Wake County be doing to truly enhance educational excellence for all children? Is it something different than what is currently being done?
The simple answer to that is to be sure that we have the excellent administrators and teachers in the system. I think we have an administrative team. We have an administrative team in place right now that is of an excellent quality and will provide the leadership to bring forth the programs that are necessary. I think we've implemented some programs this year through some extremely difficult budget times. We have made sure that we protected the classrooms as much as we possibly could. Over the last 2 years, we've lost over $100 million in budget shortfalls from the state of North Carolina and federal stimulus dollars. But even with that loss of funds, we have not eliminated one classroom teacher, and as a matter of fact, in the current school year, we will be adding some teachers. Not an awful lot, but a couple of hundred teachers will be added to the payroll. And in addition to that, we've mandated some new programs in many of our schools. We've been able to overcome the budget shortfalls and still bring about some improved programs.
Well, I think number one to encouraging student achievement is that we continue to attract and retain the best and brightest teachers, and we also have to give those teachers the tools they need to be successful. One of those tools is resources. We are in desperate need of more resources in our public school system these days, and I think everyone would agree with that. I would like to say comment on Mr. Margiotta's comment that his current budget protected the classroom this year. I think they did a pretty good job, but it's important to note that they did have to cut back on teacher assistants' time and salaries. They had to cut back on assistant principals. They had to cut back on janitorial staff, and all of this impacts the classroom. Now, I wouldn't be so concerned had it not been for the fact that this same board chose to move their central offices to a brand new fancy facility in Cary completely unnecessarily, and now we have an empty office building on Wake Forest Road that we won't be able to sell thanks to our slow real estate market. We could have used that money for our students.
And the last question for these two candidates, with Ms. Evans beginning, before we open to the audience questions, is in 1991, year-round calendar choice was offered as a way to address rapid growth at a lower cost than having all schools on a traditional calendar. What role do you see year-round schools playing as our county continues to grow?
Well, I think the year-round model was a very innovative thing when it was introduced to Wake County. I actually lived here when the very first year-round elementary school was started in Morrisville, and the parents that chose it loved it. So for the first several years, at least 10, I'd say it was a voluntary thing, and the people that chose it really loved it. I understand it was unfortunate when, because of our capacity issues, we had to resort to mandatory assignments to year-round schools for some people who did not choose it. I would like to see us avoid having to do that, and that, again, comes back to having the capacity that we need, and that just requires the funds. But I think having year-round schools in the long term will continue. They are a great way. They add 25% additional capacity to each school, and I'm sure that we will see them as a large component of our school system for quite a while.
Our year-round program has worked well as a voluntary program, that parents have a choice of calendar. And a few years back, we went to mandatory assignments to year-round schools, and it didn't work because we could not get the capacity within the schools. Parents would not accept certain tracks. And as it turns out, we've reversed some of those schools back to either single-track year-round, which does not give us any capacity gain, or to traditional calendar schools. Clark County, Nevada, one of the first innovators with year-round schools this past year, due to budget restraints, converted all of their year-round schools back to traditional for cost savings. So it's turned out that year-round schools, as has been pointed out, it's rare that they save any dollars. So I think, again, the year-round calendar is fine for those parents that choose the calendar, but they must have the option of the traditional calendar schools.
Thank you, candidates. And now we will open the forum to questions from the audience. I would like to set some ground rules. If you have a question, quietly get in line along this side of the room. You will speak from this microphone. Please ask your question in no more than 15 to 30 seconds. We do not have time for one person to go on. So have your question phrased in your mind or have it written down so that you may be concise. Your question will not be directed to a single candidate. Both candidates will answer your question, and they will, again, reverse order each time, so no one is first all the time, which means Mr. Margiotta will be the first responder to the first question. If it is possible, please allow District 8 residents to go before anybody who is from another district with a general question, because this is the District 8 forum. And above all, be respectful. Oh, okay. State your name. All right, and clarify which district you are in if you're not in 8. And this will serve under the same timing, 1 minute, and the timers will hold up the 15-second alert and then the stop. So first question, please, and Mr. Margiotta will be the responder.
My name is Hardin Engelhart, and I live in District 8. My question is, what is your vision for the role of magnet schools in Wake County Public Schools? What changes, if any, would you like to see made to the magnet program? And will you represent the interests of magnet families in District 8, even if their children attend schools outside of District 8?
I think I've stated earlier, and I'll state again, I'm a strong supporter of the magnet programs, magnet schools, that I think they've worked well, and I don't have any problem with parents in District 8 and students from District 8 attending magnet schools outside the district. Magnet schools have served an excellent purpose for many years, and they will continue to do so as far as I'm concerned. I don't see any reason for any major changes. One of the concerns that I have are the bus rides for so many of the students, and I think we must make an effort to find a way to overcome those 2-hour bus rides for parents. We might have to start using some smaller vehicles so they can be transported in a faster manner, but it's crazy to think about a student spending 2 hours to get to school and 2 hours getting back home at the end of the day. I mean, it's 4 hours a day out of learning time, out of time that they could be spending at home. So I strongly support magnet programs, and I don't see any great major changes coming.
Well, I also have already stated my support for the magnet program. I was here when the magnet program was begun in the 1980s, and for those who don't know, it was begun for 2 reasons: to help balance diversity in our populations in our schools and to help utilize underutilized inner city schools that were under capacity while we were growing tremendously in the suburbs. So it was a program created to entice suburban parents to come inward to help balance schools so that we didn't have to build more schools, and it has been extremely effective. We have waiting lists every year for more students that apply to magnet schools than can get in. So I'm a proponent of growing the magnet program. I think there are some schools just outside the Beltline of Raleigh that would be great candidates for additional magnet programs, and I would encourage that and hope that that will continue to be a very effective way for us to balance our populations in our schools and provide for efficient use of our facilities.
Hi, my name's Amy Womble. I'm in District 9. My question is, the school board has created a high poverty racially identifiable neighborhood school in Southeast Raleigh this year, Walnut Creek Elementary. $1 million extra have been poured into this school this year alone. Next year, there will be no more federal stimulus money to help minimize the cuts in the classroom. If our new assignment plan creates more Walnut Creeks, where will we find the resources, the money for these schools? Charlotte had to pull money from suburban schools. Some high poverty schools there get $11,000 per pupil, suburban $4,000.
Well, those of you who know anything about me know that I'm extremely concerned about creating high-need schools. I'm extremely concerned that we allowed this to happen, that we opened a school knowing that it would be 85% disadvantaged students and that it would cost our community more. People have to understand that. If we go to some type of pure neighborhood school model, this is what will happen. I've heard Superintendent Tata himself admit that we'll spend $1 million more on Walnut Creek Elementary than we will spend on, say, a school like Davis Drive Elementary this year. If we went to a pure neighborhood school model, we would end up with anywhere from 17 to 25 of these additional schools, and this is per Superintendent Tata, so I'm not making up that number. It's extremely important that we continue to find ways to balance our population because we obviously do not have more resources. If we have to throw more resources into those higher needs schools, I got news for my suburban parents, you're going to lose funding for your schools.
I visited Walnut Creek, and I can tell you the parents are scrambling to get into that school. I mean, that school has just opened, and it's already prepared to add modular units. Parents can't get in there fast enough. The teachers are so excited about the program within the school, and I think what we're going to see is some successful results. And I think to presuppose that an assignment plan is going to create low poverty schools is just a supposition on someone's part. I think what we have to be concerned with is providing choice for parents, for all parents across the county. When the trial run was done with this assignment plan, parents across the county overwhelmingly support proximity, support a school closer to home.
Next question. Yes.
Oh, okay. Brett Wetzel from District 8. I have a simple question. You addressed this in part in your opening statement, Susan, but just wanted to know how you became interested in being on the school board or what's your motivation for being on the school board.
I think my interest for becoming involved with this, my interest for being involved with the school board started a number of years back. When certainly not my child was in a school, you know, with his gray hair, I'm a little over the hill. But my grandson was reassigned 3 times within a 4-year period. And that certainly impacted me and certainly created an interest in correcting that kind of a problem so other parents didn't suffer that same situation. My daughter wound up pulling my grandson out of the public school system, and that's what's happened to a great number of parents and families in this county. Our percentage of students out of the public schools, even in these difficult economic times, is almost 18%. That's more than double the national average. And a good part of the reason for people being out in private schools or charter schools or homeschooling is a good part of it has to do with our assignment policy and the assignment policies of the past. That's why we need an assignment plan that keeps everyone and brings those students back to our public school system. Is that, oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a longtime Wake County resident. I've been here for 31 years. I did have 2 children that went through Wake County schools, and I've always appreciated Wake County Public Schools as a great public school system. A couple of years ago, when the new board majority took control, I began to get very concerned over the divisiveness that I saw at the school board table, the lack of collaboration that was happening at the school board table, and I began attending meetings and advocating for better policies. As a result, after spending 2 years advocating and trying to educate the community on the importance of our school issues, I decided that it was my duty to get involved, and so now I'm running for this office.
My question's really for Mr. Margiotta. I am Lisa Bullock. Okay, well, my question is this. I'm concerned about the allocation of funds towards improvements for schools, and I understand that there are improvements scheduled for Panther Creek and other schools, which, in my opinion, their schools far exceed the quality of building of the school that my students are attending. And I am in District 8, and I'm wondering if the candidates have any say in who gets the money for those improvements, because it seems like we have the haves and the have-nots in our school facilities. I'm Lisa Bullock, and I'm with District 8.
Susan will answer first.
Well, I do know from attending a lot of school board meetings and work sessions in the recent months that our facilities staff within the school system works very hard to establish a priority list of projects. This includes new construction that they see that is needed, as well as renovation projects that are needed. They make presentations to the board, and then the board, makes decisions and passes motions to proceed with what they can depending on the funding that they have. So yes, the board does have control over agreeing with the direction that the facilities department presents or steering away from that as they see fit. But they do rely to a large extent on the staff for that information.
Just response to your question concerning the haves and the have-nots. I think that school construction, as you mentioned specifically Panther Creek or a new building, and the needs are based upon the availability of seats, and we're lacking seats. Panther Creek was built for 1,600 students. They'll be up to 2,400 students this school year, and if we don't put a ninth grade center in there for next year, they're going to be at 2,700. Impossible to function with those numbers. So that's the reason that Panther Creek will be getting a ninth grade center. As far as the new high school, Apex High School, as we all know, is overloaded, overcrowded, was at the top of the list in the last bond referendum for renovation. It'll be at the top of the list for the next bond referendum, I'm sure. Holly Springs High School is also overflowing. So that's why we determined that the seats, the school should go in the location that it's going. It's all based on specific needs. Elementary school is way up the other end of the county because that's where the elementary seats are needed more so than anywhere else.
And you may stay there because you will respond first to the next question.
Hi, I'm Amy Lee. I'm in District 3. You both have stated the popularity of the magnet program, and I agree. However, the last 2 years, the magnet applications have dropped off. Why do you think that is?
Who's first? Am I up first?
Yes, you are.
I think it might have dropped off because people are realizing that there's only a small percentage of those applications that are actually approved. I think the approval rate of the applications has increased this past year. We see an increase of approximately 15% additional magnet parents being accepted into the schools. I can't tell you why the applicants go down. Maybe they feel that they're more satisfied with the schools that they're presently attending.
I would have no idea either, Amy. I think the magnet programs still continue to be quite popular, and I know that there are still more applications than there are seats, so I'm not concerned that we don't have enough interest in our magnet program. But I think everybody in our school system in the last couple of years has become a little anxious over what is the new direction that we're headed in, and some people are just taking a wait-and-see attitude towards a lot of things, and so that might be at play.
I'm Randy Waite, and I'm actually unsure of my district number. My question is, it seems to be a public perception, or at least some public perception, that the school board acting as a cohesive group currently is somewhat dysfunctional. I'd like to know what both of you would do in the coming years to try to get more cohesiveness among the board.
Well, I couldn't agree more that as I've observed the actions of the current school board for the last 2 years, it's very disappointing how unable they are to work together. We've had a very distinct 5-4 majority at the board, and unfortunately, they've oftentimes been unwilling to even dialogue with the people who didn't share their opinions, or cut them off in the middle of their dialogue and call for a vote when there had been very little discussion. I have watched over and over again as decisions had just been ramrodded through with this type of behavior. So I want to promise you that I want to bring well thought out decisions to the board, and I want to talk amongst my fellow board members, and I want to hear what everyone has to say, and I want to have work sessions where we can get all the information that we need to thoughtfully contemplate the issues and not be rushed to make decisions with a 5-4 vote. Thank you.
I'd just like to point out some of the accomplishments of this so-called dysfunctional board. I think we've instituted 4 Renaissance schools. These are schools that we've instituted programs for low-performing schools, some of the lowest-performing schools in the county. Teachers will be given merit pay, performance pay as it's called now, based on a very complex formula. It's not just based on improving test results. It's a very complex formula that's been out there, and we've received funding and grants to be able to implement these programs. We're very excited about these. I think they'll be good test programs to see how they work, and all indications are that they are going to give us some great results. We've been able to accomplish some of these by watching. Is that a stop? No. Oh. We've been able to accomplish many of these programs by really digging in deeply into the expenditures. As I mentioned earlier, $100 million in 2 years. But we've looked at and evaluated every contract in the system, and I'll go on later. Okay.
The person who posed that question might want to check with the League of Women Voters table back there and find out what district you are in. Anybody that doesn't know needs to find out. Next
question. Good evening. My name is Raymond Sanchez, and I'm in District 8 in Apex. And my question has to do with the using taxpayer dollars to fund private education. There are certain institutions that would like to see the public school model disassembled, basically, and those tax dollars that we pay as citizens taken to be given to families. What's both of y'all's opinions on using the tax dollars to pay for private education?
I don't know that anyone is proposing tax dollars to be given to private education. Closer, okay. Good. I don't know of any proposals for tax dollars being given for private education. This board certainly doesn't take a position, and it's something that's completely out of our hands. That would be something that would have to be taken up by a state legislature. State legislature in North Carolina is pretty potent and pretty powerful. We as a school board are somewhat restricted as to what we can do. We don't have taxing authority, and neither could we allot any, public funds to be used for private education.
Well, I believe the asker of the question wasn't implying that the Wake County School Board would set these policies to give vouchers for private school attendance. But yes, it is something being considered by our General Assembly, and I find it offensive. I am a believer in public education. I am a product of public education. I believe that a great public education is the right to every child in this democratic society. Everything we do as citizens needs to be to build that up. We don't need to be tearing down our public school system and encouraging people to go to private school. If they want to go to private school, that's great. They have that choice. I have no problem with that, but we as taxpayers should not be paying anyone to go to private school, and that is definitely how I feel about that.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Brennan, and I am in Deborah Goldman's district, just recently reassigned. However, my children are assigned to schools within District 8. For many years, for the past decade, the results of attempting to balance population has been particularly disruptive to people at the end of this county. It's resulted in massive reassignments, forced assignments to schools. And my question is to Susan, when you talk about balanced populations, what exactly does that mean, and how do either of you feel this impacts education?
Okay, not sure of all the parts of that question, but yes, I agree that families in this part of the county have been aggravated by a lot of reassignments and mandatory year-round assignments and all kinds of things that were aggravated for families. But I want to be clear that the majority of those issues were a result of our massive growth. People need to understand that 1/3 of the students that are currently in our school system were not here 10 years ago, and that we opened 51 new schools in this county from 2000 to 2010. You cannot open 51 new schools and not have to shift some students around. But with that being said, as I've said earlier, I don't think that was done as well as it could have been. I think we could have done a better job with guaranteeing families more stability and not moving the same family more than once every 4 years, and I will work for those kinds of policies. I don't know that I have time to answer any more than that, so.
I think balancing a population of a school to me would be, would be providing students with the challenge programs, and that they attend a school as close to home as possible, and that we bring some of those magnet programs to every school in the county. Right now, we're instituting some STEM programs in a few high schools in the county. From my viewpoint, in the next school year, I expect that we will have a STEM program in every high school in this county. We are presently impacting middle schools for the first time in our history to mandate that a foreign language be implemented in the middle school. We had better start bringing foreign languages to our elementary school students. That's, to me, would be a balanced school. Good results.
Don't sit. You will begin first. Okay. Next question.
Basically answered my question here.
Then don't ask it. If it's a repeat, please don't ask it.
Well, just maybe one part to that question is, how would he? Oh, Stacy Heinen. I'm in District 8. I'm a mother of 6. I have kids in every level of education. So stability is very important to me. And so I guess my question would be is how would each candidate rank the stability in our school systems, importance of the stability in school assignments so that kids know where they're going to go. So I would like to know if that's very important for you.
I believe that 3 points are important: stability, proximity, and choice. And I think the new assignment plan that is in the works right now will guarantee a child that starts at a particular school will remain at that school for the entire term. And they will also know the next school that they will attend. Their middle school, they'll know their high school. That's a part of stability that's extremely important to families. It's extremely important to communities. For too long in this county, we have been assigning students for different reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with community involvement, that have had nothing to do with achievement. Now we're going to start assigning students based on family structure and community involvement.
Well, I believe I've already stated a couple of times how important I think stability is. I think that's the #1 concern for our families and the thing that we need to focus on the most with whatever student assignment plan we develop. With that being said, I don't think it's impossible to have a student assignment plan that gives families stability but still offers balancing of our schools. They're not mutually exclusive things. The stability just says that we tell this family that when you enter that school, you can stay in that school till the child finishes school. I know that's not what our previous policies did, but I do believe we can develop policies that guarantee that and then still meet the needs of balance and populations in our school, and that's what I will work for.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Charay, and I'm in District 8. I come here as a taxpayer. I have 8 grandchildren. They're out of state. I have noticed that there has been a little interest on a lot of the communications that we need to put together with non-family or families without children in. Okay. Well, my question is how will you integrate the taxpayers who don't have children in the community in the future as far as decisions, the decision process?
Well, I do agree that it's very important, and I recognize that approximately 70% of the residents in Wake County do not have children in Wake County public schools, but they are funding our public schools. So it's very important that our taxpayers know what is going on. thankfully, I think the media does a pretty good job of covering what's happening in our school system. But I don't really know what would be a good vehicle for us to communicate with the general public otherwise, but I'd be willing to take that under consideration, and if people want to join an email list or some type of distribution to keep the public informed, I think that'd be a great idea. I do just want to say that I know that public schools affect our whole community. Having a great public school system is interconnected with our economic prosperity here in Wake County. I want to point out that having healthy, balanced schools across all of Wake County helps all of our property tax values, property values stay strong. It also has helped us with efficient use of our facilities and keeping our spending as low as possible. So I want taxpayers to know that I have their best interest at heart, whether they have a student in our school or not.
Fiscal responsibility is extremely important to me. I ran a business for 40 plus years. I won't tell you how many, or you'll guess my age. But it's been extremely important. I was in a labor business, which is not a high profit business. And when I was young, first starting a business, had a man that was working for me. He was a man that came, he was a Holocaust survivor. And he used to continually point out, watch the pennies and the dollars will follow. That always left that mark in my mind, and I've followed that theme for my entire life. Now, during this past two years, since I've been chairman of the school board, we've, as I mentioned earlier, we've had $100 million in reductions. We instructed our staff to review each and every contract in the system. Some of the major reductions we saw was our cellular contract. We were able to save $400,000. We were just 2 weeks ago, we were just able to save $230 on some of our legal liability contracts. And we've eliminated, I'm stopped, so I'll finish up later on another question.
And don't go away because you'll be first. Whoever's last is first. We have time for 2 more questions.
My name is Larry Diener. I'm in District 8. I have 2 children in Apex High Schools. I'm a former educator myself at Enloe Magnet High School. And I have a question. For a long time, as long as I can remember, attending open houses and talking to parents and talking to teachers, they're always begging for money. They're not money, resources, copy paper, those sorts of things. How can we restore the seemingly limitless resources and energy of our teachers back to teaching and away from begging for basic resources?
Yes, I would agree with you 100%. You know, I think if you can pick up from my southern drawl, I yield from a different part of the country, where the per pupil expenditure in many cases is double what we spend here in the state of North Carolina. So there isn't that begging for supplies that we find here. I think the funding for the schools is woefully inadequate, and I think we have to find ways. And our superintendent of schools is right now, he's just came back from a trip to Washington, D.C. He's out across the country trying to reach for foundation money to overcome some of the deficits that we have. And I think I don't see any bright side to our economy. I think we'll continue to have for the next couple of years. So we had better find some outside funding in order that we can overcome some of those. I mean, they talk like little menial things, but there's also our teachers haven't had a salary increase in 3 years. There are so many factors out there that have to be corrected.
Well, there's one thing that Ron and I can completely agree on. I think that our public schools system is woefully underfunded, and I really would like to work to change the culture of that. With that being said, I recognize that the school board has very little authority over our income. We are dependent upon the state for the majority of our funding, and then we get a small piece from the county, which is a little bit more discretionary. I will say I was very disappointed with this current year's vote of the school board majority that was made in the spring when approving the current budget for this year, when a motion was made by Dr. Ann McLaurin to petition the county commissioners for additional funding than what had been proposed so that we could get level per pupil funding. They were agreeing to accept level funding, knowing that we were adding more than 3,000 additional students this year. I was disappointed that our current school board majority voted against asking the county commissioner for more funds, and as a school board member, I promise to be a #1 advocate for resources.
You did that one.
Good evening. My name is Marissa Gaither. I am in District 8 here in Apex. And I'd like to at least have one question on what's happening in the classroom. And one thing I see as out in the workforce, one of the most important skills that our students need is to learn critical thinking skills. And with that, I ask, how do we as taxpayers and parents know that what is being taught in the classroom is a balanced approach? I'll just use one example. In economics, as we know, our country at the state, local level certainly is dealing with economic issues. How do we know that they are being exposed to Keynes versus Hayek versus Milton Friedman, and they get a presentation of both sides to be able to learn and think critically? Thank you.
Well, I certainly am not an academic specialist, and I will not hold myself out as one, but I will rely on the staff that we have that are in charge of academics for our school system to know that they are executing the curriculum that the state has told them to execute. With that being said, I too am really concerned that with the focus that we've had in the last decade or so on standardized testing, we have moved away from innovation in the classroom. I feel like teachers' ability to instill creative analytical thinking has really been hampered. We teach to the test. We worry about memorizing what we have to know for the test. We have not empowered students to be able to think in a critical way and to apply their knowledge, and that is a climate I would like to see changed.
Again, I'm not an educator, and I certainly cannot respond to your question specifically. But I think if you need an answer, there's no reason in the world why you can't contact me as a board member, very accessible. As long as you can spell my last name, not the easiest one to spell. I'm listed in the phone book, and I'll get answers from you for administrators. And I think we need to be continually questioning our staff, our administrators on these points that you're making. So it's not that I'm not wanting to respond to your question, but I can't respond as an educator. But I believe you should continue to ask these questions so we are challenged. And I think we have an obligation to challenge our students. I go back a long ways, and I think we are starting to, if anything, we're starting to reduce our standards. Right now we're going through grading practices, which is an extremely important matter as to how we grade our students. And we're moving to bring it back to the advisory councils, that we get some input from the parents before we institute our changes in the grading practices. But that's all part of the same.
Don't sit down. I'm going to take the prerogative of the moderator and allow one more question with extreme bias to a young member standing in line, and this will absolutely be the last audience question, as I did warn you at the beginning that just because there was a line did not mean that we would extend the forum. So again, this is the last question.
Hey, my name's Will Stelplug, and yes, I'm a senior in high school, and I'm in District 7, and I wanted to ask that, because I've seen the big disparities between, thank you, I've seen the big disparities between the programs in schools, between magnet schools and non-magnet schools, and between magnet schools as far as classes and other programs. So how do you intend to correct that disparity through funding or assignment proposals between the different magnet schools and the non-magnet and magnet schools?
Mr. Margiotta, whoever spoke last before speaks first next time.
I don't think we can ever expect to mirror the magnet schools in all the schools across the county, or we wouldn't have a need for magnet schools. Neither could we ever afford it. However, as I stated earlier, the whipped cream and the broccoli analogy that I use, I think what we need in all parts of the county are more challenging programs in all of our schools. We have to bring these programs to every school in this county, and I think we also have to bring some vote tech. There's talk now about the possibility of bringing a vote tech high school out in the area combined with Wake Tech. That's a couple of years down the road. But even if we have that school, we should have some VOTEC programs in each and every high school in our county. And I think that's something that we should strive for.
Well, I've spoken earlier that I believe that all of our schools need some enrichment in their academic opportunities. I realize to the extent that that is going to require funding, that we'll be limited in what we can do, but I would hope that we can begin to think and talk creatively about what we can do to make our curriculum for our academically gifted students more challenging for all students in all schools. But I also do want to recognize that the magnet schools have to retain their magnet status. The reason they're called a magnet school is they have to pull people in who wouldn't otherwise necessarily choose to send their child to downtown Raleigh to go to school. But I do want to see us strengthen our other schools as much as we possibly can, and I think that is something that needs attention.
Thank you. Now, before we have we started. We have no more questions. I said this at the outset. I'm sorry, that's the way things just have to run. We have to have rules. All right, I have a couple. Before we have the candidates' closing statements, I would like to ask that all of you fill out your evaluation form, please. Put it on the table as you leave. The second item is the candidates need to pick up their signs before they leave so the community center is clean when we leave. Thirdly, if people would be willing to fold their chairs and put them on the chair racks before we leave. There's one back there and there's one up here. That would be much appreciated. All right, now the candidates will have 3 minutes to give their closing statements. Please give them your attention. Beginning with Mr. Margiotta, since Susan did her opening statement first.
Just like to comment that and try to point out some of the accomplishments over the past 2 years. I think that our school system has become more family friendly, easier to manage, and more responsive to parents. And again, one of the greatest accomplishments that I seem to read out there and supported by the public is the hiring of a superintendent, Tata, a man that's bringing new and fresh ideas to our school system. We expect some great results from his leadership. I think his leadership is unquestioned. He's been received well throughout the county. We are presently working towards an assignment plan, one that will incorporate proximity, stability, and choice. The task force that's been working on the assignment plan has been listening to parents, working with parents. I believe they had 19 meetings, and they have made many changes along the way with feeder patterns, and they're still not finished with their project. I think we must continue to increase educational opportunities for all students in the system. We are presently, even through our present budget decline, we are offering a foreign language at all middle schools. I support foreign language being moved to elementary schools, not in the distant future, but in the immediate future. We'll work very hard to introduce new programs and do more for all academic levels in our district, as this young man has requested. I will remain focused on protecting the classroom as we did during these difficult budget times. It's very easy to be on the outside looking in and criticize for not asking for additional funding from the county. I think the county gave us flat funding for the past 2 years, and I think it was the relationship that this board has with the county commissioners that we were able to achieve flat funding. County cut every other department within their budget, in some cases by as much as 10%. I think we were, because of our relationship, was able to receive flat funding rather than any reductions. They cut sheriff's department, they cut human resources, but they did not cut their funding to the public school system. Again, with the $100 million loss, we were able to retain any and all teachers and not eliminate any teachers. We were able to do so by reducing staff, and we're hurting in some areas. We've reduced an awful lot of staff in central office, central services, and all of this, you might say, is far away from the classroom, but it still has some impact. It'll be a ways before we can get back to where we were 3 and 4 years ago. Again, I will continue to be a fiscal hawk and look for ways to save money without affecting our classroom. I would appreciate your vote on October 11th, and I welcome you to get onto my website. It's ronmargiotta.org. Thank you for being here this evening.
I was going to suggest you
I'll
come up
stand
here
for my
so they
closing
can
remarks.
see
Y'all
you.
been patient to not look at me so far. Thank goodness I was blessed with a big mouth. I am running for this seat on the District 8 Board of Education because I honestly believe our community wants top-notch schools and a board that leads with professionalism. As I have talked with many people in this area, one thing is very clear. Families are fed up with reassignments resulting from our growth in previous school boards that appeared insolent to their concerns, and I want people to know that I understand these frustrations. The current school board majority was elected because our families were crying out for relief. What they got in return was a board majority that has polarized and embarrassed our community. We've been the laughingstock on national media. Our high school accreditation has been put at risk. I don't think this is the change most people were asking for. Taxpayers, parents, and teachers want a school board that makes cost-effective, school-focused decisions, not a board that implements political agendas. It is time to put politics aside and to collaborate on finding sensible, fiscally responsible solutions to our complex student assignment and growth issues. I promise to give this my very best effort. Most importantly, I want to refocus our attention to the business of providing a highly effective learning environment that properly equips our students and our teachers. I believe in public education. I have a genuine concern for the welfare of the students. As an accountant, I'm analytical and make decisions based on facts, and I will lead with integrity and work to build consensus among all parties. As a business owner, I appreciate the interrelationship between the quality of our public schools and the economic prosperity of our region, and I will work to keep Wake County Public Schools something of which we are all proud. As a parent whose children attended our schools, I have much respect for Wake County Public Schools. I also recognize the need for families to have a voice, and I will solicit meaningful community input. I'm eager to meet with my principals, teachers, PTA representatives, and parents in my district to hear their concerns and to collaborate on visions for the future. District 8 is a great community with parents that are actively supporting their schools, and it deserves great representation on the school board. I will champion a highly efficient, balanced school system that promotes strong property values for all residents, maximum use of funding, a well-educated local workforce, and a community that is attractive to businesses and families. I can offer strong leadership with better planning for the future and a commitment to excellence for all our students. For a sensible and refreshing change, I urge you to cast your vote for Susan Evans on October 11th. Thank you.
You're a rock star. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, audience. And remember to vote on October 11.
This has been the 2011 Wake County School Board District 8 Candidate Forum, presented by WakeUP Wake County and the Wake County League of Women Voters. Election day for Wake County School Board races is October 11th. Early voting and same-day registration runs September 22nd through October 8th. To learn more about this year's candidates, please visit ncvoterguide.org. For more information on WakeUP Wake County, please visit wakeupwakecounty.org. And for more information on the Wake County League of Women Voters, please visit lwvwake.org.